For many of those who believe that the Earth has been visited by extraterrestrial spacecraft, this remote New Mexico ranch is hallowed ground. The story goes that it was here in the summer of 1947 that one of the greatest discoveries in human history was made. The holy grail of ufology, concrete evidence proving the existence of alien life.
Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer at the Army Air Base in Roswell, receives a telephone call. The call is to go to the ranch of Mac Brazel and investigate some material that Brazel has found on his land. Marcel goes to the ranch and brings back a load of debris. And this stuff was extraordinary. Jesse Marcel was absolutely convinced that what he found was extraterrestrial, that the debris was nothing of this earth.
Marcel loaded up his car with the strange wreckage and drove the 75 miles to Roswell. He stopped at his home to show his wife and 11-year-old son Jesse Jr. what he had found.
Woke my mother and myself up saying, I want you to look at this. I mean, I can remember it just like it happened yesterday, the type of material that was there. The most curious part of the debris that I saw were the I-beams, the structural members with pinkish violet writing along the inside surface. It's more like geometric symbols. It was very impressive. When you see something that impressive, even as an 11-year-old, it stays with you.
Jesse Marcel Sr. took the debris to the Army Air Force Base at Roswell early in the morning of July the 8th. And by noon, the base commander, Colonel William Blanchard, authorized a press release proclaiming that what Marcel had found was the remains of a flying saucer.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Russia has demanded...
There was tremendous public excitement. I mean, the newspaper archives from that time, it was just all over the place. I mean, it was national news. It was a big deal. And people were very excited and very, frightened and everything else.
For one moment in history, Roswell, New Mexico could claim to be the only place on Earth where evidence existed that this planet was being visited by alien spacecraft. It was a short moment.
The next day, there was a press conference organized by General Roger Ramey. And Roger Ramey says, we did not recover a flying saucer. This is no flying disc. What we recovered was a weather balloon.
The papers reported General Ramey empties Roswell saucer. The Army Air Force reduced Marcel's discovery to nothing more than a harmless, high-altitude weather balloon.
The public accepted it. This was immediately in the wake of World War II, and I think most people basically trusted the government. And so, they had no doubt that this was genuine, and this was true of the press as well. There was very little skepticism about it, and it just kind of went away.
For 30 years, no one paid any attention to the events at Roswell. Jesse Marcel's story of a flying saucer that crashed might still be forgotten, were it not for a ufologist named Stanton Friedman.
I got involved in 1978. I was at a television station in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The station manager, out of the blue, he says, the guy you ought to talk to is Jesse Marcel. He handled the wreckage of one of those saucers you were interested in when he was in the military. What?
Stanton Friedman found Jesse Marcel. He was retired from the military and was a television repairman in Houma, Louisiana. Marcel had a story to tell.
What I saw, I couldn't believe there was so much of it. It was scattered over such a vast area. We found a piece of metal about a 1.5 to 2 feet wide. You couldn't even bend it, you couldn't indent it, even though the sledgehammer would bounce off it. So it was not anything from this earth that I'm quite sure of.
My dad finally came to the conclusion that this is a story that should not be contained or buried. He felt it was time that people know the truth about this.
But what is the truth? The wreckage hadn't been seen since 1947, so there was no way to prove Jesse Marcel's claims, which never stopped Stanton Friedman and his fellow Roswell promoters. The first Roswell book appeared in 1980. It said that what crashed was a flying saucer. It said there was no evidence because the government was hiding it somewhere. The government was engaged in a massive cover-up.
If there has been a UFO cover-up, it began in Roswell, New Mexico. A persistent rumor holds that the United States government has recovered and is concealing fragments of alien spacecraft. Fragments and more.
This all came together at a time when people were ready to buy into conspiracy. And then, in 1989, Unsolved Mysteries did the recreation of the whole event, and off to the races we go.
This Air Force base here in Roswell, New Mexico, was the center of a controversy back in 1947, but over 40 years later still remains unsolved.
Jesse Marcel's story about a day long ago was becoming an article of faith, and the promoters were busy spinning it every way they could.
You think there was a government cover-up?
There's no question about that, not only about this case, but lots of other UFO cases.
After investigating for their new book, Kevin Randall and Don Schmidt are convinced it was a military cover-up.
A parade of new witnesses came out of the woodwork to share the limelight with tales of secret government activity and alien bodies found in the wreckage.
The small nose, eyes like this. About how tall? About 5'3", 5'4", some of as tall as that thing.
Are you saying that extraterrestrials were found in Roswell?
Yes.
Dead?
Dead extraterrestrials were found, no question about it.
This is an incredible story.